And here Eric arrived, and the new maid said to Princess Malika's maid, "What do you mean? You? Are you insinuating that I'm harming Her Highness's body?" And Malika said, "I don't know either. How can I know if the ointment you're using is poisonous or not?" And the other, in shock, said, "What?" Then she said to herself, "This on what basis are they accusing me?" So she took some of the ointment and put it in her mouth. Then, in anger, she yelled at her and said, "Look, I told you it's not poisonous. And if you're so worried, you can try it too." And here Malika felt nervous from her reaction. Here, Eric smiled and went to Mesa, saying, "Madam." The maids turned to him, and he said to her, "I'll be back before lunch. I'll be back soon. Please rest well." Then they felt nervous when he looked at them and said before leaving, "I'll rely on you to take care of Madam." Then he went out and closed the door, and he said to himself, "Honestly, I still don't understand Mesa's actions from yesterday." Then he went on, saying, "Why would she go to so much trouble to act, even at the risk of hurting herself, despite the fact that she provided her with influence over the maids of the imperial palace? Could this be what Mesa wants?" So he decided and said, "To understand Mesa's true intentions, removing the surveillance eyes is the first step. Here, he means his servant Malika and Delhi, his brother the king's followers." Then he continued, saying, "And after that, I will proceed step by step." But when he remembered how his brother treated her and how he tortured her, he felt angry. Then the scene changes as he shouts at Emperic angrily, saying, "What? You want me to train the knights?" And Emperic, "You heard me clearly. I want you to take care of the matter for a while." And Emperic, "Why do you decide like this on your own? Do you know how busy my schedule is?" But Eric said, "Besides playing with women, what else do you have to do?" And Emperic, "There are other things for Netu to do." And Eric, "Enough. You will be responsible for training the knights starting tomorrow." Then he pushed him out of the room and closed the door. Then he said to himself, "Until Mesa fully recovers, I've decided to leave the training of the knights to Emperic for a while." Here, the knight Colin said to Eric, "Commander, I have assigned the knights you mentioned to Lady Malika and Crispin." And here Eric said to him, "Good job." Then he said to himself, "As I have also assigned exceptional knights to both sides for the pursuit." Then he asked him and said, "Go and bring Edley without telling my mother." And when Colin did that, and went, and Edley came and knocked on his door, and Eric said, "Come in." And here Edley entered and said nervously, "What is it, sir? One of the servants told me to meet you quietly." And here Eric said to himself, "Edley was a skilled head maid, and she was my mother's favorite since childhood." And here he said to her, "Thanks to you, it wasn't difficult to dismiss the maids." Then he said to himself, "After I submitted a report to Lady Malika and the palace yesterday, she secured a copy of the relevant report about my diligence and hard work from the palace archives. And luckily, she managed to accurately convey the facts." And here he said to her, "But if those who come to replace them are like them, our plan will be in vain. That's why I need your help." And Edley, in surprise, said, "My help?" Then he continued to himself, "For dealing with the palace maids, Edley, who has spent 12 years on the battlefield, might be more suitable than me. She has been in the capital. She has undertaken various tasks, such as gathering information from other families." But Edley said to him, "Instead of me, it would be better if you took direct action." And Eric, "I have already given Mother permission to help you, but I hope that this matter doesn't reach Mother's ears." And Edley nervously said, "Understood." And here Eric said, "I heard that Lady Malika bribed the head maid, Nymeria, before. I would like to investigate this matter first. Who could be the intermediary that you can contact?" And here Edley said, "Well, it's difficult to contact the head maid Nymeria directly. I heard that Viscountess Manor is having trouble with her younger sister. Perhaps if you could only solve that, would she grant me entry to the main bedroom?" Then the scene changes as Eric returns to his room and said, "I'm back. Here, he was shocked to find them like that. At the same time, the maid looked at him and said, "You've come." And Eric, "What are you both doing?" And here the maid said to him, "While music or theater might be good for someone suffering from a mental illness, but all we can do in the bedroom now is paint." And Eric, "I've never heard anything like that before." "Where did you hear it?" And here she said to him, "It's not like I researched it or anything. I heard that the young lady has been through a lot recently." And here Eric looked at Mesa, and seeing her looking at the maid and smiling, he smiled too. At the same time, the maid continued and said, "So I thought it might be a good way to relieve feelings for someone who has a lot of them built up." And here Eric bent down and held Mesa's face as he said, "From now on, I will only read books to her. I'm sure she will sleep well listening to stories." And the maid thought and said, "Would that be good?" Then she looked at him and said, "If you want to read a book, you should read a fairy tale." At the time Eric was wiping the paint off Mesa's face, the maid said excitedly, "A book! I'll choose one for you." But Eric said, "I think you should go today." And she, in shock, said, "Excuse me." And Eric said, "Didn't you say you were busy? You can come back tomorrow morning." And the maid, "Oh, I see you're still working, then." Then she left quickly, but Eric said to her before she left, "Is there anything else you want to say?" But the maid said to him, "Oh, no, there's nothing." "Okay, goodbye to you both then." And she closed the door and stood in silence while Colin was standing and looking at her, but she didn't notice. So he said in anger, "This is outrageous. How can he treat people this way? He hasn't raised my salary yet, and yet I'm supposed to handle both the doctor's duties and the maid's duties. I thought the war was over so I could properly focus on my medical practice. But I don't think I can do that if this continues. Why the hell did I leave my village where I could just focus on treating people?" But Colin said, "You're getting paid from both sides." And here Mesa looked at him and said, "Ah, really? Then I have nothing else to say." And suddenly, Eric opened the door, and she was shocked. And Eric asked her, "Where are the clothes for changing?" And she, "Ah, yes, you need to wash." And Eric, "Just tell me where the clothes are." And she, "Under the shelf." And Eric, "Thank you." Then he immediately closed the door in her face. So she looked in shock, then turned and said to Colin, "Okay, don't mind what I said earlier, I'm just speaking very practically." And Colin, "I've heard that all leaders are like that, but why suddenly—" And here she said nervously, No, that's not what I mean." Then she sighed and said, "I don't know how to say it. Even if you speak that way, you should greet the lady properly." But Colin said to her in surprise, "Why do I need to maintain proper manners with the lady?" And the maid remembered how Eric treated Mesa and said, "No, I mean, maybe the leader doesn't communicate well with the lady. The leader's view towards the lady is kind of—" But she stopped and said to him nervously, "It doesn't matter. I just mean it would be good if the two get along well. Sorry. I've overstepped." But Colin said, "I haven't seen the leader interact with the lady directly, so I don't know. But isn't he usually strict about manners? Even if his tone is a bit cold, he's never been rude to us." And May laughed and said, "Oh, okay, as long as she doesn't hide anything from the commander." "Yes, that's right, because he values loyalty above all else." Scene changed to Eric looking at Mesa, then going to prepare a bath for her. He checks the water temperature and asks, "Did you enjoy the drawing activity?" Mesa replied, "That wasn't a fairy tale book." Eric apologized, and Mesa continued, "It was more like an adult conversation." Eric understood and suggested, "Since you've already started, it would be good to read books that help with conversation. Read a novel. They have lots of dialogues to practice with." Mesa shyly replied, "But you lack basic etiquette, so you can't have a conversation." Eric smiled and said, "I understand. I'll bring books with tips on basic etiquette." Then, gesturing for her, he said, "Now, shall we go there? The bath preparations are finished." He approached her and began to undress her to take a bath. Mesa said, Embarrassed. I'm embarrassed by Eric's face. I'm uncomfortable. Eric asked, Does my face make you shy? Mesa, blushing, replied, Eric's face turns red after taking a bath. She pointed outside and said, I want to do this alone, Eric. Go out. Eric blushed and said, But, didn't you hurt your arm? It's not good to do this alone. Then, nervously, he said, Then, I'll just wash your hair and remove the paint. Is that okay? Mesa looked at him shyly and let him do it. When he placed her in the bathtub, he said, By the way, don't be too reserved. Then he held her hands and said, From now on, try to speak even a few simple words out loud. The more you practice, the better you'll be at it. But Mesa felt shy and pulled her hands away, saying, Now go. Eric asked, Will you be okay alone like this? Mesa shyly said, Go. It's okay. Go now. Eric sighed, feeling embarrassed. Then he left, saying to her, All right, call me if you need anything. He then left the room. When she made a sound, he looked towards the bathroom and smiled. After she finished her bath and came out, Eric asked her, Did you have a good bath? But Mesa angrily said, No. Tomorrow Gila will help me with the bath. Eric nervously said, All right, I'll tell her to help you with the bath starting tomorrow.